Hello and welcome to Thursday's edition of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Anderson, and I am blessed to once again be joined by Mr. Robert Borthwick. Hi, Robert.
Blessed. Wow, what an intro. Thank you very much, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is. We were talking off air. I thought we should have done this beforehand, because I've anecdotes. I mean, have you been back out in the pubs yet, Robert? Have you experienced the outside world once again?
Oh, yes. So we were very charitably given Monday off. The entire team at work were given Monday off to go and explore the pubs. I was back. I was back on the lagers on Monday. Went to Barrowlands Art and Design, and then the Number 10 Hotel in Glasgow. So it was very pleasant. Apart from all the rain, it was very pleasant. I drank loads of tenants, and it was tremendous, mate. How about you, Tony? How about you?
Yeah, my job didn't sort of give us all the day off, but I took the day off. We've got flexi time, so I put in for a half day, and I joined 5 friends at about 12:30 up at Belfield Brewery, which is just up Abbey Hill for those who know Edinburgh. And then we sort of spaced it out. We were very organised. We were so keen. We had sort of 12:30 to 2:30 there, half an hour window to get to Jeremiah's Tap Room, which is at the top of Leith Walk. So there from 3 till 5, and then all the way down at Lost in Leith, which is at Commercial Quay, from 6 to 5:30. And they basically were nice enough just to let us stay the rest of the night, because most people didn't bother going there because it was raining. But we just sat like 6 sopping wet middle-aged men. Drinking pints, leaf juice as it's called, from there, which is a nice pint. And I had a lovely day, if I'm being honest, just talking rubbish. Even managed to steal. Craig Anderson done a quiz for you guys on the chat when I was going out, so I was just able to rob that quiz and be a quiz master at the table. So that was always good fun. I do that a lot when Craig Anderson does those quizzes. I just take it instantly, send the answers to Mandy, who's my fiance, sent her the answers. So I've got a list of the answers, get a message of who's Scott Gemmell from Mandy. Don't worry about that. And then I just use that to then do the quiz with everyone else. So yeah, I had a wonderful day.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. It'll be interesting to see how long the military precision planning of pints actually lasts for, and how many people just book one place and then try and blag their way into others thereafter. It'll be interesting to see how that continues. But no, that sounds like a brilliant day, Tony.
Well, let's talk about people who've been having brilliant days all month, Robert, because today we're going to be doing the top 5 players of the month from April. And there's only 2 games a team in the league, so we normally try not to involve other competitions and make it purely the league, but we thought that'd be silly right now, especially with how many cup rounds were in this month. So we've incorporated everything. So everything that's happened this month and with the top flight teams in Scottish football will be included. And Robert, who have you got at number 5?
I'm actually going to start with a player who plays for a team that got knocked out of the cup. So what a start. I have gone for Motherwell's striker, Devante Cole, as my number 5. I think that since this whole season, really, Devante Cole has been impressive. He's not been scoring every single week, but as a sort of reimagined number 9 in that Motherwell team, he's made such a huge impact. I think that the slight tweak to formation that Alexander made, whereby Devante Cole played as that focal point number 9, Tony Watt dropped to number 10. There's just been a massive difference in how they play and how they go forward as a team as well. Obviously, Motherwell in the month of April, unbeaten, apart from in the Scottish Cup, which, again, technically unbeaten over 90 minutes. Are we going to count that? I don't think so. But Devante Cole is just one of these guys that stood out above the rest. I think there's a couple of Motherwell players in contention for this. But Devante Cole, his hold-up play is running. He did get a couple of goals this month as well against Formartine and the winner against St Mirren back in the 10th as well. So he has contributed a couple of goals. But generally, just his all-round play, and as I say, that he's kind of benefiting from that tactical switch that Alexander's made to the forward line at Motherwell, whereby he can be the guy that's on the shoulder, that's hassling defenders, that's holding the ball up and bringing guys like like Tony Watt into the game. Obviously, Tony Watt again, he's been injured a bit this month, but he's been a proper game changer for Motherwell when he's been fully fit. So Devante Cole is my number 5, Tony.
Yeah, great. I think you're really spot on about. He sort of took the bird. Obviously, Tony Watt, we've always known as a really great player all round. I think people who watch a lot of Tony Watt are always quite surprised. I always get that feeling whenever he moves to a club, because obviously he's had quite a nomadic career. But I remember, like you guys, when he played at Hearts, you looked as a stats. If you're looking at stats, Tony Watt's never blown you away. But whenever people watch him sort of on a weekly basis, they really appreciate him. And I think with Devante Cole, it sort of takes away the burden of goals for Tony Watt and lets him concentrate on everything that he does well. So I think you're totally right that that tactical switch has sort of benefited all the forward players, including Roberts at Motherwell. And anyone who's listened to me talk before on the podcast or doing these top 5s, Cole, I think, is actually the sort of most rounded striker outside of the old firm in the league. As you said, his ability to drop deep and link up, coupled with his strength, he's pretty big, but then you add the speed. So you've got a guy who can come short, who can also go over the top. And I think you see how difficult teams have that when Motherwell do that. I mean, I'll use Hibs as an example. It wasn't this month, but a few months back when Motherwell beat Hibs at Easter Road 2-0, he was so good dropping off, and Hanlon was chasing him. And then he would, and as he would get there, he'd pop it off, and then he'd run in behind. And so just so difficult, because most strikers in this league, they have attributes, but they don't have the sort of whole package. And I really do think that Cole might have that. And if he's out of contract in the summer, personally, I would love to see him at Hibs. But I'd imagine there'll be maybe people with deeper pockets who might be interested in him. Yeah,
I mean, you'd think so. He's got the legacy of his old man as well, which always helps. But I think those attributes you're talking about with the speed, the strength as well. That you can see why he was sort of played in a wider position in that Motherwell team. But definitely that number 9 role just suits him down to the ground, and like you say, it suits everyone else. The signing of Jordan Roberts actually helped facilitate that a wee bit and moving Cole inside. So obviously Roberts is out for the season now, but regardless, that change has really helped. So no, I think he's not going to be my top pick for Player of the Month, but I think he deserves recognition for his performances recently.
Absolutely. And even in that Hibs game when Motherwell had nothing, he sort of made that. I know the goalkeeper saved it, Macy saved it at the near post, but when he just totally done Hanlon, and Hanlon just had to sort of step back, he couldn't touch him because it was in the box. He done that sort of scoop touch with pace to drive past him. And I was like, there's not many strikers who could just turn it on a sixpence like that and just be in on goal. That was totally of his own volition, his own just pure ability, and like all the sort of attributes we were talking about combined, creating a chance like that. There isn't many strikers outside the old firm who've got that whole package to sort of create a chance of that ilk where you just become, I cannot touch him in the box, I'll be getting red carded. I went with Kelly, actually. I went for Motherwell with number 5. I went Kelly as the goalkeeper. And there could be an argument here that it's because it doesn't have to, because of what he stopped happening. So he doesn't have to be absolutely incredible. But he's made it that Chapman doesn't have to play the Chapman. Yeah. And that's a real bonus. As I say, Motherwell, they didn't have a great. They talked about unbeaten this month without being sort of really impressive. I know Graham certainly wasn't impressed over the weeks, despite them getting some decent results. And obviously, one of the games in the cup games, for example, I mean, one of them was a sort of penalty kick win against Montrose. So they obviously weren't on fire. And then Hamilton, they were sort of hanging on, and they managed to win that derby. But Kelly just seems to be capable of sort of all the things that you would want. He's got a bit of decent distribution. He saves if he should make, and he does make some saves he shouldn't make, and he does have a couple of mistakes, and he's had some moments, but he's relatively young. So I guess that'll happen with Kelly. But I don't know, Robert, I was going to ask you, is it me or is the goalkeepers got worse? Because I always remember that Hibs, obviously we had crap goalies who made sort of stinking errors. But I've found in the last couple of seasons, been the couple of seasons of like goalies who don't do even the most basic sort of attribute of a goalkeeper that, I used to ignore, like people would say, oh, he's a good shot stopper. Everyone would laugh because you would assume that all goalkeepers would be good shot stoppers. But in the last couple of years here, that hasn't necessarily been the case.
I think it's maybe not the case that goalkeepers are getting worse. It's just that less good goalkeepers are coming to Scotland. I think because you look at in the last few years, there's teams. You always look at teams outside the old firm, maybe outside the Edinburgh clubs in Aberdeen, who've genuinely really impressed. And you've got like Vaclav Hladky and players like that. Obviously, there's another goalkeeper that I'm sure we're about to discuss at some stage in here as well. Liam Kelly is another one who has sort of stood out from his time at Livingston before he went down south to QPR. So I don't think it's that goalkeepers are getting worse. I think it's maybe that Scottish clubs are signing worse goalkeepers.
Yeah, because you have Pereira, who's possibly like...
Fucking hell, mate, come on.
The nadir of like goalies all day. And then you've got Chapman, who again, sort of felt like he was jumping out the way of the ball. And then obviously Doyle at Kilmarnock's having a really tough time of it just now, and it is like, and he can't just seem to even just gather a ball in a normal way from any type of sort of strike. So it's just like these sort of like inability. If you're not a good shot stopper, I just struggle to understand how you got to that profession. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree. And Chapman at Aki's is one of the most ridiculous goalkeeping performances I think I've ever seen in my life. It was like a hologram, and that's coming from a guy who had to watch Joe Pereira play week in, week out for a full season. So yeah, but I think if you look at the top flight just now, there are some cracking goalkeepers in there, because Jack Annick this season has been brilliant. Mm-hmm. We're talking about Liam Kelly just now. Ophir Marciano, you know what you're getting. Joe Lewis consistently has been a cracking goalkeeper. Xander Clark has some incredible moments, sort of individually in football as well. And, you kind of look towards the lower end, and yes, you've got your Ross Laidlaws and your, previously Aaron Chapmans and stuff like that. But I think there's still decent goalkeepers in Scotland, even in the Championship. Craig Gordon, Jamie McDonald's had a good season. Mark Ridgers has had a really good season as well. So, maybe you're being a wee bit harsh by saying that there's a lot of shit goalkeepers in Scotland, but I think there's been a lot more visible errors from goalkeepers at times in the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, that's part of it. It's maybe that there's been 3 or 4 goalies that I've never seen quite so bad, and that's sort of like clouded my judgment on everyone else. Because as I say, even though I was a Hibs fan and we had a catalogue of bad goalies, it was always just like errors. Some of them, like even Malkowski used to be able to make some good saves, but he would just spill things. That would be his biggest problem. And Makalambi, it would be sort of erratic handling, but again, he would make some decent saves. And Simon Brown, it would just be, well, he did actually just get out the way of the ball once at Tynecastle. So
yes,
yeah, that's sort of what I meant. These guys that were like, people like Pereira who concede a goal every 2 shots, just seemed like just unfair that you have got this profession. You're not performing well enough to have this profession. But who you got for number 4, Robert?
For number 4, so I was going to do the other goalkeeper here, but we've just had a wide discussion about goalkeepers, so I'll change it up. And I'm going to say Hibernian striker Kevin Nisbet.
Here we go.
I think there are a few Hibs players who have really stepped it up in this last month. Hibs have had a fantastic month, as we all know. But I think that Kevin Nisbet, the main reason I want to bring him in is because after the transfer request gate, shall we call it, he kind of not fell off a cliff, but he wasn't scoring as regularly. He wasn't really putting in as many great performances. He was dropped to the bench a wee bit as well. But in the last month, he's really picked up, and he's doing it at the right time for both club and country. And I think that, we're seeing the Kevin Nisbet that we saw towards the start of the season. He's putting chances away. But not only is he doing that, he's contributing to the team as well. I think that such an underrated part of Kevin Nisbet's play is, quite how deceptively strong he can be when he's on the ball. The way that he can drop deep, he can hold it up, he can bring guys like Martin Boyle into the game. He can, complement Christian Deutsch when they're on the pitch together as well. And he's putting in performances that are really sort of firing him towards a potential wildcard Scotland place, but also, when Hibs are looking to confirm third place, when they are looking to win a Scottish Cup, this is exactly the kind of form that you want your main striker to be in. And that's absolutely what Kevin Nisbet has made himself again, for me, as Hibernian's main striker, the talisman, and he's really shown that in the last month. So Kevin Nisbet, for me, is the man.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah, I agree, Robert, because I was shocked at the start of the season when I realised some of the other elements onto his games, things like that I really didn't have any idea. Like in the air, he scored quite a few headers, and not just like your obvious headers. There'd be some quite unusual ones that take a lot of technique. He's done that a bit, and he scores all types of goals in the box, tap-ins, as I said, headers. And I really like when he's really on his game, which he has been in the last month. He's really good on the half turn, and it allows Hibs to play at speed when they go forward. And this is, as you're saying about that all-round game, that the goal against Motherwell that Deutsch scored, it's a nice little sort of like quite a long-winded 1-2 he does, I think, with Paul McGinn, and he gets it turned, and he gives him a really, really good pass that makes it get out his feet quicker. That means that Hibs are able to do that whole move so much faster, which means Deutsch is able to get the run on the defender, and then the ball, and obviously McGinn puts in a good ball, but all those things are linked. If one of those things isn't done as fast, then the chance is really gone. That sort of smooth chance that allows Deutsch to get like a really pure header on it. But yeah, I've always been shocked about how much Nisbet actually had to his game. I must be honest, I don't watch a lot of lower league Scottish football, as I've said before, but I didn't realise he was quite so good at everything when he was sort of out sharp and at his best. And it couldn't be better timing for him as an individual and for Hibs, like you said. And with McBurney now being confirmed as out, I think Nisbet's all but confirmed. I'm thinking with a slot at the Euros, and if he can get on that bloody pitch and score against England, then we'll take 5-6 million, Robert, and that'll be money well spent.
That's the way to think about it, man. That's it. It's, I think you look at the guys like Lauren Shanklin, Lee Griffiths, Ollie Burke, the other potentials that are going to come in for that forward slot. And right now, I would take Kevin Nisbet because he's just hitting that form that we saw at the start of the season. I mean, before he scored, it was the only game that Hibs lost in the month against Rangers. He'd scored 2 goals in his previous 17 appearances, and now he's got 3 in his last 4. So it just shows that he's properly kicked back into gear. And like you say, I think it's Kevin Nisbet is maybe one of those players that you will continue every time you see him to appreciate a new part of his game, because we're kind of watching him improve at the same time. Mm-hmm. Coming up, stepping up a level from lower leagues and stuff like that as well. So yeah, that's it. Number 4 again. He's another one. I've got a very set in stone number 1 for Player of the Month here, but Kevin Nisbet, similar to Devante Cole, just absolutely deserving of a shout. Yeah, and that goal against Rangers, like I said, that's that header again. So yeah. It's just like, and it's not an easy header; it's a flashing header into the ground and at the roof of the net. And that thing, he's got a lot of strings to his bow, Kevin Nisbet. And I think he's one of those players that if he picks well his clubs and his coaches, he could really go on to have like a really decent career, because he seems to be, he has a bit of everything, and that'll excite, like maybe, I'm really thinking of it, maybe like Darren Jackson. Robert. You're a huge Darren Jackson fan as well. I remember that.
Absolutely, yeah. As I said, growing up when I was that young, Hibs were absolutely garbage for many periods of it, and Dan Jackson sort of just done everything. He would get the ball wide, cross it in for himself, and run in and header it in. That's how I always felt. And just like with Nisbet again, Dan Jackson was surprisingly good in the air. People forget that Nisbet maybe has shades of Jackson. I always think Jackson was one of those guys that maybe was a bit unlucky in his career. He always seemed to turn up at clubs where they were shit and be quite the talismanic figure for them.
That's exactly what he did at Hearts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you might be onto something.
And then obviously when he was at Celtic, it went wrong for him because he got his illness. And that was sort of like maybe his goal that was going to be his moment to play for like a really, really good team. But yeah, that's Nisbet. He's just got a bit of everything. And if he picks the right coaches, yeah, definitely I could see him achieving a lot more than most. My number 4, I'm going to go for J. Emmanuel Thomas, Robert.
Nice.
Good shout. Because when he first came out, I criticised him more than I've criticised anyone this season. That game, I think I mentioned this on our podcast, that game against Rangers at Ibrox is when he first joined and he got beat and he was up against Hollander. I actually found it a bit embarrassing of how off the pace he was. I knew he'd had serious injury problems before, and I expected him to look slow, but I was still quite taken aback about that. And I was really thinking, like, in Scottish football terms, there's no hiding place for that type of thing. You need to be fit. You need to be quite all action. You need to be into it in Scottish football. That's the one thing that's sort of demanded of you here. And he really wasn't at it at all. But in recent months with last month and maybe a bit before that with Scott Robinson sort of filtering away and sort of not signing a new contract, and sort of Martindale basically banishing him from the team. Is that right, Robert? So it seems to me.
I mean that's all possibly confirmed rumour, but yeah, that seems to be the chat. Yeah.
And Cole and so J. Emmanuel Thomas has came in and he's improved dramatically, and you can see how much faster he's got. He's still a really big guy. He'll still never be like a really, really sharp turner, but he's sort of learning to take, when I've been watching him, he takes an extra touch to bat and he feels behind him a lot more. So it's like, again, these are the things that we talk about. People talk about match fitness. I think it is these type of things that you're talking about. He feels behind him a lot more. So he gets himself the space because he needs a big circle to turn, really. He's a tanker. But if he gives himself that.
He's an absolute 18-wheeler, but you're absolutely spot on. And like one of my favourite things about Cole, Emmanuel Thomas, is his touch. Like his first touch is brilliant. Mm-hmm. It's really, really good. And you saw that in his first goal against Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup was just absolutely brilliant in that way. You know, taking the ball in, running in on goal, and obviously he scored a penalty in that game as well, which was really nicely put away. But I think the key for me is, you could say it's match sharpness if you want, but just getting used to Scottish football and getting used to the defenders he's going to be playing against is such a massive part of it. You know, you can tell that he now, the look of him, it's almost like he has fully researched the defender he's coming up against, because he can pick on weaknesses. Mm-hmm. That's what he did so well. And like the standout performance was that game away at Pittodrie. And coming up against those guys and just dominating them, you know, getting past them, you know, not through necessarily skill or pace, but just his touch, and just, you know, being able to turn them and get through on goal, and you know, obviously because of the physique of the man, he's an absolute hulk. He naturally can hold the ball up, bring others into play as well, and he's got a lot more to his game than just being this big guy. And I think that, you know, we've seen it with, you know, myself. I've seen it with the likes of Uche, for example. There was more to his game than just, you know, pinning guys down and trying to turn them. But I think that, you know, guys who are built like that and guys who play football like that can use that to their advantage. You know, they're underestimated a lot of the time, and they can really use that to sort of to further their game and help the team even more. So,
and it should, and it should. And in theory, when you look at Livingston's squad and team, a guy like Jet is the focal point centre forward should work pretty well. They're not, as I said, I don't buy into Livingston being agricultural, but they do go direct and they play their football in the last third. I've said this numerous times. They play. It's not that they're horrible to watch, just that they get the ball forward quickly, and then once they're in there, they can be quite intricate in there. Because they've got quite a lot of talented attacking midfielders who all they share different attributes, Pittman and Forrest and guys like that, and we're getting them close and Sibbald and all that. These guys are they're all pretty quick, they're all pretty all action, and if you can get them in and around them, you could imagine that'll work a treat. And with Robinson going, I can probably see that now. Think that Jet might be the sort of main man as the striker at Livingston next season. Really,
absolutely, and he's still only 30. You forget that. Like J. Emmanuel Thomas is a name that's been around for years, but he only turned 30 just at the turn of the year. There, he's got a lot left in his tank. He's kind of, for a striker, should be hitting his peak just now as well. So good player.
Right, what you got for me, Rob? Number 3.
120th minute, Ibrox, the big 7 foot tall, luminous man in the 6-yard box, Xander Clark. And this is purely for that moment that I'm just, talking about just now. Xander Clark, man, he's had the moment of the month, and he's been, of all the football that has been played in Scotland in the month of April, Xander Clark, it's going to be his face planted on the April page of the calendar next year. Because he's absolutely made it his own. Having a moment like that, as Xander Clark has always been known as a character. Anyway, I think the way that he conducts himself on the football pitch, the way that he conducts himself sometimes on social media and stuff like that. He's clearly, he's up for a laugh. He puts himself out there, and him having this moment for St Johnstone at Ibrox against the rampant favourites for the cup. I'm still wanting to give him the goal. I don't want to call it an assist. I was just downright refused to give that goal to Chris Kane. But having that moment, and then obviously being the hero in the penalty shootout as well, for a St Johnstone team that under Callum Davidson has just surpassed so many expectations. They've become Rafa Benitez's Liverpool in cup competition. They just look unbeatable. And yeah, he's been such a major part of that, from the League Cup campaign to the Scottish Cup campaign, and then obviously we're talking about the month of April, so we have to put him in the conversation for Player of the Month, purely for that one moment where he leapt unattended in the 6-yard box, much to the Rangers defenders' anger. Big Xander, man.
No, I totally agree. I don't have a problem sometimes with one-off games putting people in these types of conversations, because the fact for Xander Clark, it was everything, and like you said, it's the moment of the month. He had probably the best performance of any player in the league in that game in the month of April, because even during the match he made some really good saves as well. I mean, especially the one for Morelos where he was trying to header it back across goal, and he used his leg, and he sort of epitomises. It was like the last player, the only player at St Johnstone that's not really sort of enhanced his reputation this season. And obviously all the other players at St Johnstone have always been, the fans love to say they're underestimated. They get quite bitter about it, and I get it. They're a small club, and they feel like they're not given the credit they're due, and their players don't get the international recognition or whatever. But and I mean, they love to have a go at us with Xander Clark specifically not making the top 12 goalkeepers in true St Johnstone fashion, like they would like to tell us. He shoves it up the media and guys like us straight away, and has the possibly the moment of the entire season. Absolutely.
And I'd like to place it on record for the St Johnstone fans that for some reason still listen to this podcast, that I absolutely adore this St Johnstone team. That there's household names within that team that I've learned or come to really enjoy this season, like guys like Liam Craig. I never thought in my entire life that I would enjoy the footballing stylings of Liam Craig, but the way that he's grown into his sort of experienced role in that team this season. Sean Rooney, obviously, we've spoken about him essentially non-stop. Even Chris Kane, a whipping boy of this podcast for many, many years, has stepped up this season. Then you've got like David Wotherspoon, Scott Tanzer, Jason Kerr, and it's guys like Xander Clark and all those guys aforementioned that make this St Johnstone team just like you kind of root for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
They're wholly likeable. It's a likeable group of guys.
They're likeable, but they've got a really decent amount of bite in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got these guys like Rooney and Clark are the two that sort of stand out as being like the sort of the boisterous characters within there. And that's it's absolutely what you need in any team. And this St Johnstone team, are on the cusp of really becoming a cult Scottish football team. You know, they could conceivably win the domestic cup double, which is insane. Mm-hmm. It's mad. And, you know, it's the fact that it's come from, you know, Callum Davidson in his rookie years as a manager as well. And just what he's been able to mould at St Johnstone and been able to do is just incredible. So for all you St Johnstone fans listening, you've got a big fan in me. But no, Zander Clark, I think you need to have these moments in football that you'll remember for a long, long, long time. And it just so happened that Zander Clark's moment happened in April 2021, and that is the month that we are talking about just now.
But I can't say. I'm with you. I'm a big fan of St Johnstone. I mean, we've got Joel's a big Guy Melamed fan, obviously, as he done on the TV show. And I thought,
how could I forget about Guy Hard?
And Alan Temple, who done this top 5 podcast with me last month, we had Liam Craig on it, and he was waxing lyrical just about sort of Liam Craig's battle back from Hibs, and how Liam Craig's sort of like the great person to have in your squad when he was at Hibs, for example, and it was going quite shit a lot of the time. It was always Craig that would come out and use the Joe Hart terms, front up to the media and all that shite. But it was actually important because everyone else did hiding, and he's still doing it now. And now he's getting his reward, and he's looked after himself so much. So yeah, just it's unreal. So many collective stories for St Johnstone, and then when you start looking at individuals, they all have their own little story to go along with it. So yeah, unbelievable stuff, and they are likeable, but hopefully they don't put the cherry on top and win that cup. Right. Number 3 for me, I'm going quite boring now, I would say, after that one, because I think it's a guy that no one can really argue with, and he's probably up there for one of the players of the year. And talking of someone getting better with age, like Liam Craig, is Stephen Davis of Rangers, who picked up a couple of assists this season. Granted, one of them was just rolling the ball to Ryan Kent as he curled it into Hibs' net from about 35 yards, and scored an overhead kick against Celtic. And that was one of the main reasons. His energy is unbelievable. As I'm sure you've noticed, Robert, it's just he doesn't seem 36 whatsoever, does he?
It's the way that he conditions and looks after himself. You know, it's getting more and more common nowadays that you know, guys can really properly look after their bodies and play to a much older age. You know, his compatriot Aaron Hughes is one that comes to mind. Obviously, played until he was 40, but Stephen Davis is just, you know. The thing for me is whenever you hear a Stephen Gerrard or a Michael Beale or a Scott Arfield or someone talking about Stephen Davis, it's always in the most glowing way possible. Gets his head down, does his job, keeps himself absolutely at the peak of his physical ability, and then goes out and he's always had that footballing ability. And, you know, he's beginning to, continuing to showcase that now. The fact that a 36-year-old man could score an overhead kick and not snap in two just absolutely astounds me. But his energy across that midfield, I think, you know, I don't think you can really look at any player at Rangers this season and say that there will be an unsung hero. I think every one of them will get the deserved heroes recognition. However, Stephen Davis maybe slightly ticks that box because you've got guys in there, Glenn Kamara, Joe Aribo, you know, all these guys that play through the middle for Rangers more often than not, Scott Arfield even, and Stephen Davis is just like, you know, is that good? He's essentially earned the term, it's Stephen Davis. Mm-hmm. That's what he does. You know, that's expected of him because he's been doing it for literally, you know, decades now. He's been playing at that level, and I think he's still just a joy to watch on the football park. And, you know, you say that wee 6-yard roll to Ryan Kent to then spank one in from 35, they all count, mate.
Absolutely.
All right? They all count. He got 2 assists in that month and you cannot take that away from him. So, you've found a Stephen Davis fan here. But then I've been a fan of Stephen Davis for as long as I can remember, to be honest. He's just a cracking player.
I used to think, I think I'd done one with Fowler months back. And I just said, you know what you're going to get from Stephen Davis. And I thought it was a really poignant point that Fowler actually was like, no, I think that's unfair. He's become sort of much more, maybe previously when he was down south, has happened sometimes. They take these roles that are a bit more reserved. when they're playing at that level. Unfairly, maybe, because he does have more than enough talent, but in this Rangers team, he's like the focal point almost in that centre of the park, and he passes forward, which I'm a huge fan of. Anyone who plays deep, as they punch the ball forward, he's always got his passes, and he's just everywhere, and he's got that good drop of the shoulder, so he can take a man out when he's running forward. You play those sort of 1-2s where he can like totally just run the entire game than there as a 36-year-old, but not in that way where it just sits deep and sprays passes. He's absolutely everywhere still, and now he's the highest. I think what's the highest capped footballer in international footballer in British history? Is that? I'm sure. Highest
capped outfield player.
Okay, yeah, it was something like that. Probably should have checked. But yeah, and that just and I don't see him. It doesn't look like he's going to be slowing down anytime soon. I can picture him still playing for Rangers for at least another 2 seasons, because there's no. If you think how many times you thought Scott Brown was on his way down, you know what I mean? These moments. We've not even had Stephen Davis' first ever moment where you think maybe his legs have gone. So I'd expect another 2 years. Absolutely.
And to confirm, he is the most capped British footballer of all time.
Great.
That's 126.
And he's more still counting, isn't it? He's still there.
He's still going. Yeah.
And that's one of those achievements you probably don't. He won't bother about really till he finishes playing, and then when you look back at that's a cool thing to be able to say. In the pub.
100%. But 126 caps, only 12 goals. Was it worth it?
Right, what you got next for me, Rob?
Are we on to number 2 now?
We are on to number 2, aye.
He is electric, and I wish he was fully Scottish. I've gone for Martin Boyle.
Martin Bloody Boyle.
Martin Bloody Boyle has he's gone on to the boil again, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's just in the last few weeks, the last few games, is like Martin Boyle is back, baby. He's completely running the show down the wings. He's scoring goals. He's setting up goals. He is terrorising whichever and whatever defence he's coming up against. He's been accused of diving all the time, but some things never change. And he's just such a exciting player when he hits a run of form like this. And I know that obviously he has been kind of blighted by injuries a wee bit in the past. He can sometimes slightly go off the boil, but it's when he hits form like this is there's rarely a more exciting player to watch in Scotland, and I say that as a Hearts fan. And there's a lot of cases to be claimed that he is the best player outside the Old Firm when he's on his day, and more recently he has been on his days. 5 goals in the month. 4 goals in the month. Obviously, 3 of them came against Queen of the South and Stranraer, but you can only beat who's in front of you. And he scored the winner against Livingston as well as setting up.
Yeah.
So Martin Boyle, you can tell I'm not happy about this. I wish I was speaking in more gushing terms, Tony, but I just can't, because every time I talk about Martin Boyle like this, it annoys me that Hearts never signed him, and it annoys me that he chose Australia over Scotland, because I think he'd fit perfectly into the Scotland setup.
Yeah, because the Scotland setup's not a million miles away from what Hibs are using. And maybe it's it's probably not as fluid as Hibs, due to the fact that we're not one of the better teams at international level like Hibs are one of the better teams in Scotland. But I would certainly think it would give our teams a lot to think about for Scotland if it was him playing on that in that right hand side wing back role. And we had Boyle and Robertson going down the left flank, the right and left flank. But he's something I really noticed about Boyle is I was saying on this podcast last week that I've went out and said it. He is the best player outside the Old Firm. I wouldn't swap him with anyone. I do that when I look with my eye or whether I look at the stats. It's 15 goals and 11 assists this season for Boyle. Granted, he's on the penalties, but he's like every season there's something added to his game. Like this season, he started taking the corners. and they've been pretty good, and he's taken free kicks, and he wasn't doing that before. And whether Hibs play him right wing back, right wing, or centre forward, which he had a really good period playing up front when Nisbet was off the boil, and he scored quite a lot of goals. And Hibs obviously have that tactical element that when we're winning, they can move Boyle central and sort of play him on the shoulder of the last defender. But there's nothing he can't do now. And he's even added, as you're saying, the diving, which for me is just great. A continental feel to Martin Boyle now, and a bit of gamesmanship. And I love the variety of his crosses, considering how he used to be quite shit. And now his first touch is like exceptional, and he doesn't do. It's hard to play against because sometimes he goes inside and he wants to do that dragged shot that he likes from the right hand side into the bottom corner, or to flick a pass through in between the defenders, or he'll go to the byline, or sometimes he just crosses early. He's a nightmare to play against. And there was one, and I think it was in the Motherwell game that Jackson Irvine missed, and he went to the byline. He thought he was going to flash it across, but he chipped it backwards to sort of more like the penalty spot, and it was right on Irvine's chest, and he mucked up the finish. But just another example is like that brain's ticking over. It's not just a quick winger bombing down the right, getting to the byline. There's he's so much variety to him that he just becomes impossible to play against. And the reason Hibs have had such a good month, like you say, Robert, is the identity Hibs are able to get when Boyle's at this is Hibs are able to strangle teams now. So before, Hibs were sort of playing in a more counter-attacking way, I always felt, which wasn't always great to watch because teams would sit off Hibs because Hibs had better players. So Hibs would have to take on the grip of the game. So it sometimes meant for quite boring matches. But in the recent times, this month, Hibs have just dominated the matches from pretty much start to finish. And Boyle's been a big part of that because teams will just have to sit off. And then obviously we've got the variety of Doidge and Nisbet of their, obviously their attributes sort of link well together. And yeah, he's absolutely superb and just becoming more and more like the most valuable player, even though Hibs are a team with quite a lot of good players. And Rob, I'm going to guess that you've got number 1, which is my number 2, is Kyle Lafferty.
You are absolutely bang on the money, Anthony Anderson. It's got to be Kyle Lafferty. I mean, it has to be. This is a man who is single-handedly dragging Kilmarnock from the quagmire of relegation potential to potential safety. And having said that, he only played 4 games in April, but scored 7 goals, including 2 hat-tricks, one against Stenhousemuir and then another against Dundee United in their big win at Rugby Park. And he's come in and, Kyle Lafferty has had a very nomadic career. He's gone to some places and scored for fun. He's gone to others and basically not scored. He's obviously had a lot said about him in various different nations as well as football clubs. But he has gone to Kilmarnock and just fit in absolutely brilliantly. He's exactly what they needed. A proper talisman, a real leader on the park as well, in many ways, lead by example, dragging them up the pitch, putting in that extra wee yard of effort, scoring goals, but also just improving Kilmarnock as a football team. Kyle Lafferty, there's one thing that you could level at him is he's maybe a wee bit greedy sometimes. He's maybe not the best link-up striker, but since he's gone into Kilmarnock, he has improved on that part of the game. He's become a team player at the same time as essentially just scoring all of their goals. So I think that you look at the situation that Tommy Wright had Kilmarnock in. Even in March was looking pretty dangerous, and since then, Kyle Lafferty has just absolutely turned it on. And turned them round. That the hat trick that he scored against Dundee United, absolutely perfect example of that. He maybe got a wee bit of fortune with one of the goals, but otherwise, a penalty really well taken. And he's just changed an entire football club and their fortunes since coming in my opinion. And he's, if and when I think Kilmarnock do sort of drag themselves to Premiership safety, you can kind of look at Kyle Lafferty and say, yeah, kind of there is the reason why and that cannot be underestimated. No. And the goals, man.
Definitely, man. We're talking about, like, he's the signing of the season. There's no two ways about it. He's so, like, it's quite interesting. I was thinking, like, I was saying this when I done this with Alan Temple last year. I was like, January business was really quite good. This one, like, obviously Bruce Anderson had a pretty big impact at Hamilton. Kelly's had a really big impact at Motherwell. Kilmarnock, you've obviously got Kyle Lafferty, and maybe on a lesser extent Jordan White at Ross County. Every sort of team in the relegation quagmire, as you put it, was it's sort of signed someone that has really improved their fortunes, and but Lafferty is definitely the top one of that list. And it's incredible, the stat that I can't remember it, but Alan said last about the goals that he scored. If you look at the first half of the season and the second half of a season over his career, it's like night and day. So he clearly enjoys the business end of the season, and he likes that. He's a guy that wants the limelight, and that can be really important. And you talked about him being too greedy. At a team like Kilmarnock, they had such a bunch of team players, and most of their squad looked really quite good. You're like, right, that's a good bit. It was really lacking someone to connect the sort of midfield with the strike force and someone to score those goals. And it's really suited him to go into a team that was lacking that, because he suits that down at the ground. And he's put the fear of God into goalkeepers, because even some of, like, the goalies have made about 3 horrendous errors from his shots as well. But it's just because he always hits shots. So you're going to get that going for you.
Yeah, exactly. And he's, I think even with his time back at Rangers and stuff like that, he just wasn't hitting the heights because he wasn't the main man. But at Hearts, he was the main man. At Kilmarnock, he is now the main man, and that's what he has to be to thrive at a football club. And he's been made that at Killie, and he's just absolutely flying with it. So yes, my player of the month is Mr. Kyle Joseph George Lafferty.
And surely Kilmarnock, if they keep up, would have to sign him. And I think a smart move for him would be just to stay when it's going that well. He's obviously got a manager that knows him and likes him and understands him. But I don't want to make too much of, like, having a fellow countryman as your manager, but I'm sure it can help sometimes. Definitely. And so I just think someone like Kyle Lafferty, why not just enjoy the end of your career? You've had that nomadic time. You've had a topsy-turvy time, but Scottish football has always been pretty good to Kyle Lafferty in terms of his successes and goals. And it's good fun for all of us, because Kyle Lafferty, love him or hate him, at least there's something to he ignites thought, and he ignites our feelings. So emotions, and that's kind of who we want. If it's him doing a robot and opening a can of beer and pretending to drink it on the pitch, fine, let him go now. If he's doing his little salutes, let him crack on with it. And if he wants to do other things off the pitch that we hear about, great. So crack on, Kyle Lafferty. And I'm fine. I'll swap with you. You know what? I'll do it. You, Kyle Lafferty, we can have as number one when it's a definitive list.
Yeah, there we go, Tony. There we go.
Because is there anyone else that you thought of? Is there anybody else that you were thinking? I know it's a tough one. 5 players is pretty hard in itself.
Not really, to be honest. Like Stephen Davis was one that I was strongly considering putting in there. Obviously, you've already checked that box. If you were to look at sheer numbers, Mohamed El Yunusi at Celtic had a decent month in April in the league anyway. So if you did just want to be looking at the stats, then he would be like a man. 4 goal contributions, 2 assists, 2 goals. But otherwise, I think for me it was Kyle Lafferty and 4 others. Yeah, that's how I was looking at it. Martin Boyle, a standout in second, but I think that Lafferty's got to be the guy, doesn't he? Yeah, I think Christian Deutsch has had a pretty good month for Hibs after sort of like a really sort of like barren spell in front of goal. He's really caught it, as we know with Deutsch, and another thing that's been really helpful for Hibs and gives me a bit of confidence going into these sort of this race for third, even though third doesn't matter now that Rangers are
out the cup, and the cup's the be all and end all in terms of the European aspirations for teams. But Doidge, like, coming into form in that, because we know how streaky he is, such quite incredible how streaky he is, but him on the streak now could be sort of really good for Hibs. I thought Gogic coming again from Hibs has had a really good month. His last 2 games have been 2 of the best he's had at Hibs, against Livingston and against Motherwell. He's been absolutely everywhere, and he's starting to take more responsibility with the ball in forward positions. Hibs, I can see Jack Ross is clearly trying to make him a better player, because if he wants to be at Hibs long term, I think that was something he was going to have to add, because Hibs have sort of more possession of the ball than he'd be used to. And maybe finally, Ali McCann Roberts had a decent month, and that his performance at Ibrox was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Ali McCann. Cracking player. Obviously, there's the chat around where he's going to end up as well. I think he's playing that well, that he's attracting interest again towards the business end of the season. But, Ali McCann is a known quantity, has been for a couple of years as an outstanding young player. Just on Doidge as well, I was just looking at his Scottish Cup record. 8 goals in his last 8 Scottish Cup games.
Yeah. Well, I'd be quite like it if Hibs won the cup and Doidge sort of like got 10 and 10, because Doidge I think everyone accepts that he's a must-have in the Hibs team, and he's popular for like a numerous different reasons, but he's not everyone's cup of tea, and he's sort of like really hard working, and his technical ability is questioned at times, which I think is fair enough, because it's not always on point. But I would like it if Hibs won the cup and you look back and sort of Christian Doidge was a striker who sort of like fired Hibs to Scottish Cup glory. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Christ, form would dictate that he should be that guy.
Yeah, and as I said, he comes across a wholly likeable man, Christian Doidge. And Hibs strikers haven't always been wholly likeable.
Yes, that's absolutely fair. He does. He seems like an absolute sweetheart, does Christian Doidge. Yeah.
But I think I'll leave it there, Robert. Thanks very much for joining us.
No worries at all, man. I very much enjoyed that. That was my first Player of the Month podcast. Very much enjoyed that.
They're good fun. We normally do them on they normally end up going on the Patreon, because they're quite good Patreon content for researching and stuff, and they're good for just 2 people to do. But we thought we'd put it out on the main feed today, so we hope everyone enjoyed listening to it. And thank you for continuing to support the podcast. And we are going to go over to Patreon just now to talk about some of the off-field matters in the lower leagues, as we had sort of like 2 rather big announcements today, Robert, as you'll know. So we're going to go over there, and thanks once again, and we'll see you all soon.
Escape your everyday with out-of-this-world action. From the gritty apocalypse of the Walking Dead universe to the cyberpunk realm of The Watch and the criminal underbelly of Gangs of London, AMC Plus is more than entertaining. It's epic. Feel all the chills and thrills with Shudder's halfway to Halloween month. Experience Shudder's biggest month of horror, featuring a new season of Creepshow and new movie premieres every week. All available ad-free and on demand. Start your free trial today at amcplus.com.